Adam Haman, welcome to the show.
Hey, Brent, thanks for having me.
Welcome, welcome. This is such a delight, man. Like, I love when we have these types of interactions where we're kind of twinsies, but we didn't really know about each other. And then, my buddy Mark from the If by Whiskey podcast bridged us together. Shout out Mark. He's got a great podcast. Go check it out. I'm just like, man, like, there's not a lot of weird people like us out there. When I find them, I'm like, yeah, I got to go talk to them. So I intentionally did not go into a ton of your background or do any research because I like to just have that initial sort of conversation organically. So that's where I'm at. For those of my audience who don't know who you are, which might be a substantial amount of those folks, please introduce yourself.
All right, then. I'm Adam Haman. I have a Substack you can get to by going to hamannature.com, Haman. And I also have a YouTube show by the same name, Haman Nature. When you look for it, put it in quotes, because otherwise you're going to get 15,000 instances of a Michael Jackson video that's great, but you're looking for me. I'm a libertarian, devotee of Austrian economics. I have a kind of a weird perspective on things because I played poker for a living for 30 years before the COVID situation sort of turned me off of it. We could maybe get into that later. So I don't know. I look at things from a very weird and interesting perspective. And as I was going through your stuff, Brent, I think we are kind of twinsies. You're interested in the same stuff I am. Epistemology, physics, metaphysics, all types of aspects of philosophy. And we should be able to talk about anything, which usually means that we'll just stare at each other for a while.
Nah. We did that backstage. We got the romantic stuff out of the way first. So I want to start with the big question, man. Like, what do you think is going on here? We're in this like really weird world right now where it feels like the timeline got completely jacked up and everyone's looking around like, what reality are we in? So let me zoom all the way out and let's tackle the big questions. Like, what do you think all this is?
Well, how far out are we viewing? Are we still in the Milky Way?
You can pick whatever scale you want, man.
I mean, politics is weird. What's going on culturally is weird. I think Elon Musk and Nick Bostrom are retarded or math challenged when they talk about the odds of us being in a sim. Nevertheless, I use simulation theory as a metaphor all the time because, oh my lord, this is a wild video game. I can't wait to see what the final level is. And you were talking about like distractions and whatnot. A couple of years ago, I bought this little guy from Thomas Massey. I don't know if you can see it.
Oh yeah,
but
I know what that is.
We're 38.6 trillion in debt as a government, whatever that means. And instead of being interested in things like that, size and scope of sphere of power and size and scope of your private actions, instead of anything along those lines, we are at each other's throats with red hot pokers over everything else. And I can't even say it's not important stuff because it is, but we are ripped apart as a society. That's for sure.
Yeah, you got to think it's intentional, right? Like,
There
feels that way to me.
There are certainly people that are. I mean, it's like you've heard this before, but for a brief moment around the 2008 crash and the bailouts and all that, there was this brief moment where Ron Paulists were mad at the banks and the Occupy Wall Street was mad at the banks too. And then really, really quickly, all of a sudden, there was just all this racism and identitarian politics. And it's like, what do you know? They're mad at each other again and not at us. How great that is. So yeah, there's obviously some sort of, I mean, it's no accident that when Bill Clinton got in trouble with Monica Lewinsky, he fired off a rocket into Sudan or wherever that pharmaceutical plant was.
Aspirin factory, wasn't it?
Yeah, it blew it up. So yeah, they love to distract us, and God help us, we fall for it every single time. Things are so shiny. How can you not stare at them and talk about them?
Yeah, but it's like, I feel like as human beings, even somebody that's got like an IQ 80, at some point you're going to pick up on the pattern, right? Like, aren't we good enough pattern recognionists to not get fooled? It's like Charlie Brown in the football. Every damn time he tries to kick that thing, and every time he ends up in his ass. And like, we're as a society, I feel like that's where we're at. And I don't know what the cure is. I've been trying to provide my perspective, and anyone who follows me on X can attest to the fact that I see shit coming like way early, to the point where I get called crazy, and then they have to apologize months or years down the road. So I'm actually really good at pattern recognition, but I think even somebody on the left side of the bell curve that just isn't great at it, at some point there's got to be a breaking point. And I'm like, if Epstein isn't the thing, like, what else can there be? It's like it could not be more obvious, where everyone is sitting around looking at each other. And we had a riot on the Capitol because the orange guy maybe got cheated out of an election, and they started burning the place down and everything. And it's like, well, we're raping thousands of children, and
And
looks
maybe
like
worse.
looks like they're eating them potentially. There's all this stuff, and like 3,000 gallons of sulfuric acid ordered to the Epstein Island. And then I don't know if you saw this, but Steve Bannon was in the files, and apparently he had to pay $14,000 because of acid damage to a hot tub. Like he rented a property in Palm Beach, and had, like, the guy was like, "What the fuck you do? Like, my hot tub is ruined. It had acid in it." And we're putting all this together, and everyone's just looking at each other. And all the politicians are compromised, all the world leaders, the intelligence community is clearly implicated, the celebrities, like, and everyone that's just part of the herd is doing nothing. It's the wildest thing I've ever seen. I'm like, if this is not the thing that triggers like a revolution, I'm like, I don't think there's a bottom. There's no lower that we can go, I don't think.
Well, you act like it's easy to get rid of a body. Let me defend the. Well, first of all, have you ever spoken to someone with an ADI?
I'm quite sure that I have at some point. I don't know exactly who those are.
Recognition is not exactly the thing. But no, I mean, what the frustration you're feeling is normal people, above average intelligence people, the midwits that Michael Malice made famous. Those are the ones that are getting fooled. And I almost don't blame them, because our little monkey brains evolved to handle a certain amount of complexity. And we're doing pretty good handling the massive complexity of our modern world, but still, it's hard to keep up. And if you add to that our dispensation towards ideological tribalism, then it becomes super easy to just dismiss the evidence presented by, quote, the other side, or anyone who's trying to tell you a story you don't want to believe. You don't have to believe it, because there's perfectly easy ways to explain away the so-called evidence, especially in the world of freaking AI. I mean, take, for example, the arguments between, forget the Austrian economists, but just people who believe in, smaller government, fiscal austerity, and they look at all the evidence after government intervention after intervention and argue with the Keynesians, etc., and nobody ever changes their mind based on the evidence, because they don't have to. There's always the counterfactual that cannot be accurately observed, and we didn't do enough stimulation and whatnot. So when it comes to something like, is my tribal leader evil, or am I being lied to or not, it's pretty easy to tell yourself any story you want, especially when you got to work for a living. I mean, look how busy most people are. So I'm dismayed just like you are, but I understand perfectly easily how it could be. And if I'm forced to bet at even money, I don't think this Epstein thing is going to wake people up. I don't think that's what's going to do it. It's going to take a currency collapse and us having to root into the ground to eat nuts and berries and taters to make people actually question the way we've been living our lives.
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with you. And I've been saying this for a long time. Like, I don't think there is any sort of limit. And I think the reason, tribalism is certainly part of it, but I also think this double-edged sword of, like, nationalism, tribalism, this sort of shared narrative that gets drilled into everyone's brain in public schools, where you stand and you chant to the flag and you get the same, what funniest thing, Ghislaine Maxwell's dad, Robert Maxwell, is the publisher of the #1 textbook company in the country. Like, that's the propaganda that's getting pumped into everyone's brains. And so we have this shared substrate, this foundational layer, which is like, well, representative democracy and republicanism and the Constitution, and like, that's what, everything. It's this illusion. It's this lie. It's a shared hallucination. But everybody buys into it. And I think the problem is, the fundamental problem is that it's not just Epstein. It's not just the government doesn't work. It's not the debt. It's not currency crisis looming. Like, none of that stuff. It's that to really get to the root of the problem, you have to flip over your entire foundation for everything that to be, or you believe to be true about society, and what kind of, from a game theory perspective, like what type of game we're all playing together. And I think that's why that sort of friction that inertia is just baked into the pie, and I don't see people getting there, like wherever we are.
I mean, the leftists are sort of always there, right? They're the ones that always want to just knock over the chessboard. And
You think so?
I mean, over history, that tends to be what they do. They overthrow some perceived despot system, and probably was, and then they institute some insanity that comes from a childish philosophy, and mayhem occurs, and bloodthirsty behavior. And that's, I mean, you've got it with these people protesting ICE in their cities, and they did it during the Summer of Love with the BLM. They'll complain about the oppressive government with ICE, paying attention to borders and trying to enforce them. And so they seize a portion of the city and create an autonomous zone with full borders and checking IDs on the way in. It's very weird.
What I meant.
Let me run this by you.
Sure.
Because we were talking about not ideological reasons why people might not want to wake up to like what's going on. There's something extremely uncomfortable about thinking that the entities, the elites that have been the backbone of the culture and protecting us, are actually bloodthirsty babies blood drinking lizard aliens from the fifth dimension. I mean, it's horrifying to think that I actually have to pick up a gun and have is a 1776 or worse? That's going to upset people. Don't want to believe that. Why would they? It's horrifying, especially since we don't have the weaponry. If we can't turn this tide with ideology, well, we can win in the physical world, but it would be by the government just, cancerously rotting and withering away, such that we could have, private institutions rise up where, they're just not involved. Yeah, we're breaking the law, but what are they going to do about it, sort of thing.
I'm a little bit concerned, being in the tech world, that we might have crossed the point of no return with respect to that. I think you might have seen the stories coming out of Venezuela about the use of directed energy weapons.
Yeah, what was that?
Yeah,
and by the way, do you think Trump was supposed to say all that into the cameras in Davos?
I don't know, and this is where I have a hard time grokking reality. That's a great philosophical viewpoint here. Being an empiricist, I like to have some sort of empirical validation for any claims. And with the government, as you know, it's just shrouded behind a veil of secrecy and psychological operations and subterfuge and lies. It's very difficult to tell what's going on. Part of me is a little bit worried, because if the government indeed does have this type of technology, and all evidence exists to prove that they've been at least attempting to develop this type of stuff, if it's real, then it's very scary. And Trump talking about it might have been a situation where I think we're seeing what's happening with the world geopolitics. Like all these giant pieces are being moved around the chessboards. Like, we're just gonna fucking take over Venezuela, to spite Iran and China, and they're gonna just steal Greenland, like all this crazy stuff. And then he's saying basically, like, we've got weapons nobody knows about, and we can take you out. It might just be posturing. I hope it's that, but the most dangerous scenario is they actually have them to the point where they feel complete superiority over any country now, from a tactical capabilities standpoint, and he's just flaunting it. And that's just why he's doing what he's like, hey, do what you want. We'll take you out with whatever tech that we have that we haven't disclosed.
Well, that kind of overconfidence is going to get us all killed, because the tech, we're getting revolutions in warfare, every few months, as we saw. I mean, drones aren't new to the Ukraine conflict. They've been doing it in the Middle East for quite some time, and that's only going to get more powerful. And what good is it to have this $1 trillion warship that a couple of, underwater drones can just take out with impunity? So I sure hope it isn't that. But hey, at least, we're not doing any more nation building. We're just kidnapping the president and first lady of some country and then threatening Europe. Give me that piece of ice. Just give me that piece of ice. It's not even located in a good place. Just give it.
Well, I, for one, feel good knowing that an American finally won the Nobel Peace Prize. So that's really great to see. So shout out President Trump.
She tried to give it to him, but they don't allow it. You can't transfer it.
That was the wildest humiliation ritual I've ever seen in my life. But no, we are nation building. We just snatched this person, and basically the CIA and Rubio comes in and says, okay, you're going to do what we want, or else. And so
did you catch the Nobel Peace Prize lady? I'm sorry, I don't remember your name, but did you catch her? She zoomed into something called the American Economic Summit or something before the operation when Trump just kidnapped Maduro. And she just basically said, there's $17 trillion worth of stuff in this country. And if you just depose Maduro and put me in, you can have all of it. She started listing it off, mining, oil, development of resources. Look at these miles and miles of pristine beaches. I mean, she seemed deranged. We played it, Bob Murphy and I, on one of our crossover shows a while back. It was insane.
Yeah, so I don't know. I'm trying to get to something that's not depressing. Can I get there? I'm not sure if I can get there. It's pretty depressing times out
We
there.
painted ourselves into a
We
corner.
really did, really did. I wanted to actually let me back up a little bit because the original question I wanted to tee up was not necessarily about how crazy our geopolitics are, or nationalism, or tribalism, or anything. This is more of like an ontological question, or a question about metaphysics, like what do you think is going, like what's reality, what's consciousness, what is mind, like those deep questions, because it feels like we're in this weird alternate.
That's easy. I got a list. I'll just read it off to you.
Oh, cool. It would simplify a lot for me because I've been chasing it for a while, brother.
Well, these are the important questions. I mentioned simulation theory. I love that one. This video game is nuts, and I've had my share of misery, but I'd drop another quarter in and play. I mentioned Elon Musk and Nick Bostrom, who say things like, it's 1,000,000,000,000 odds that we're living in a simulation. You familiar with the argument?
Oh yeah. I'm familiar with that, and I completely reject
I hate that
all
argument. I hate that argument so much. As a gambler, I think of odds in a particular way, and we don't even have one data point for a simulation that the inhabitants of it find it indistinguishable from reality. So, yeah, sure, we might create something like that, but you're trying to tell me trillions to one? Come on, man. It's not how math works.
Yeah, well, it's just trust me, bro. And then you throw some metrics at it, and you sound smart, and people just believe it. Like, oh wow.
Hey, man, when he builds the thing and the rocket comes down and the chopsticks catch it, okay, maybe I should trust you about stuff, but no, not this one. So what is
I
the
will
nature
remind
of...
everybody that he was begging to go to Rape Island, so just keep that in mind.
Boy, oh boy.
And he was meeting Epstein I guess as recently as almost the beginning of Trump's first term. He was having private dinners with him. Like, come on, man.
I don't want to drag us back into negative, depressing territory, but why don't people care? Why don't they want to know? I mean, these seem like pretty bad crimes, and we're just like not interested.
I don't know, man. I feel like maybe it breaks people's brains to some degree. Like I said, this is like a paradigm shattering. Yeah, and people resist that entirely.
Well, they control our media forever. They've controlled the schools for over 100 years, and they've taught us to trust elites. And so, yeah, we're going to feel like baby without the binky if our elites get taken away from us. So we're scratching and clawing to keep a hold of them.
What do you think? What do you make of the I'm not trying to go down this rabbit hole too much further, but what do you make of the MAGA people sort of doing like the hardest 180 on every single issue they just campaigned on like 8 months ago? Like that has been the wildest reversal. There's always a reversal. Like I always watch, and basically the base, they clamoring for policy ABC, and then they come in, and then the new guy does the same thing or the opposite of what they promised, and they still defend it.
I think there's a couple things going on. I believe you're a follower in some respect of Jordan Peterson and the things he...
Yeah, actually, the name of the podcast is an homage to one of his quotes. So yes, I'm a fan of...
I'm a big fan as well. And so, as you know, we think our species in narratives. Our brain has a narrative structure. Everything that we absorb through our everything gets slotted into some narrative or another. And one of the ones that's so hardwired in us is white hats and black hats. And so when you see you're Joe MAGA, you see a side that you're convinced they're bad actors, they're black hats. So you automatically assume that whoever opposes that must be the good guy. And that's why they have this slavish devotion to Trump, just because the left has gone so insane. I mean, I assume you'll agree with me that, there's faults on the left and the right over the centuries, but the left went completely nuts like 15 years ago on a whole bunch of different metrics.
Completely. Not going to get an argument from me there.
So, yeah, if you're looking for a political savior to all of that, and you should, you're just going to defend Trump because he came along and just spit in these people's eye, and it was entertaining and great, and hooping and hollering and cheering, and they deserve to get their eyes spit in. Trouble is, he's just a fallible man who doesn't know anything and is susceptible to all the sins that man is susceptible to, and power corrupts. So, but once you've identified a team and you've got your dear leader in the white hat, you decide you really weren't all that interested in no more wars and nation building. And it turns out, yeah, maybe the Epstein thing was kind of overblown, and we were all, you can hypnotize yourself to believe you didn't think what you fervently did think 2 years ago. That's a thing. We do it all the time.
Yeah, and it's just shocking to me because I see, I guess, with respect to social media, not necessarily. There's an easy way to internalize those dialogues, but when you're typing a tweet that's directly contradicting that thing that you said like 5 months ago,
That's
like
still up.
the
That's still
polar
up on the
opposite. Yeah,
platform. Yeah.
it's still there's actually an account called This You, right, where they just post people. They'll post some crazy shit and they'll post them saying the opposite like 6 months ago. When you're actually typing the words and you're like, I'm going to publicly say the complete opposite and just act like I didn't do a complete 180. It's a wild thing to observe. Republicans being against the Second Amendment now.
Yeah, isn't
Like
that crazy?
it's
Isn't
just
that
the
crazy?
wildest thing. And then all these Republicans that are like, oh, fuck the feds, and we're going to push back against tyranny in our streets. And then then it's like,
Again,
well,
it's
no, the feds are great now. We like the feds. It's like,
it's black hats and black hats. Like, I had a debate with Jacob Hornberger over the immigration issue. It started from the one Dave Smith had at the Soho Forum, and so that sent Jacob off. And I was defending Dave's side by saying, strictly speaking, the libertarian position in a minarchy where there is state property, even though I'm an anarchist, I think that's an abomination. Since there is that, it just can't be the case that the citizens who've been robbed to pay for public infrastructure, it can't be that 8 billion people can just come and occupy that and there's just like no recourse. But despite all that doesn't mean I want any of that border enforcement at the, down south. And what ICE is doing is just an abomination. I would just like, strictly speaking, you weren't invited here. You could have a hop-in proviso or something like that, a bond. But failing all that, I'd just like to see, anybody can come anywhere they want as long as they're invited. It doesn't have to be explicit, just implicit. I don't think they should have the ability to vote. I don't think you should either, or me. Voting
you're probably like me. It's like, yeah, exactly. Nobody
and then
should
trim
be able
down
to
the
vote.
welfare state, and it's like, who cares? Supply and demand will sort this all out. Anyway.
No, I actually love this topic. I think borders are like the most
well, yeah, I'm tying it into the
subject.
Double black hat thing, because like ICE is obviously black hats up there in Minnesota and elsewhere. But on the other side, I see these screaming, unhinged leftists. It's not like patriots out there trying to save their fellow man. It's these absolute loons who would enslave me in some communist hellhole if they had their way. I hate these people. So it's like, I just don't see any.
I understand that. Here. I understand that impulse, but this is where I like my anarchist nature and my libertarian, and my philosopher in me always cringes a little bit, and it's like, you can't judge individuals based on.
You're right.
But I get it. Like, if you were to do a poll, right? If you were to map this out on a distribution, like, yeah, you're probably like most, but also, like, I see myself as the most anti-left person there is, anti-authoritarian, and I look at this and I'm like, these are fucking Gestapo in the street, man. These are thugs, these are tyrants,
and so badly trained. I mean, that guy grabbed the one kid's gun and just fired off a negligent discharge as he shouts gun, gun, gun like a lunatic. I mean, when you have such massive hiring, I don't think the cops are well trained anyway, but these bunch have to be just the worst.
It is the worst because it's almost zero training, no physical fitness standards, and you have protection from the president, who is saying, like, no matter what you do as an ICE officer, if it's in the line of duty, we'll protect you. And you saw that after the shooting. Is like immediately they pulled those agents out. They wouldn't disclose to the media who these people were, and they just pulled them out of Minnesota and shuffled them off somewhere else and are protecting them. I think that's like the most explosive, dangerous approach across the board when it comes to these ICE agents.
On the other hand, might inspire little Timmy the R-word Walls to declare a secession movement, and maybe that'll catch on. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think we need a radically decentralized political movement.
Yeah, man, I gotta say something here before I forget. Sorry, I'm very ADD,
No,
but
no,
but
it's all
this is
right.
really, really important. Is I think this at this moment is a great time to build bridges because because I know a lot of people that are on the left. I talk to everybody, and I'm hearing a very loud signal from the left based off of this most recent Trump administration. When you view it in sum total of everything we talked about, all this horrible stuff, culminating with like the tip of the spear is the ICE stuff and people getting shot in the head and all this Gestapo tactics. The left is finally saying, "Oh, you guys were actually right about the Second Amendment." And I'm hearing this across the board. So I'm
Good,
kind of like, instead of
good.
like, guys, instead of fighting with these people, like maybe come on in, like let's have a discussion. And I don't see a lot of people doing that. And I think that's a shame. I think it's a missed opportunity.
I think you're totally right. I also want to agree with you and defend myself. I speak in collectivist terms lazily, but I'm not a collectivist.
I
But
know
I
you're
am a
not.
gambling man. If you marched all of those protesters in front of me and gave me even money odds, I'm just going to bet Marxist across the board, and I'll come out okay. But that doesn't mean each and every one.
Well, I think it's going to be very similar, right? We can have like with any type of movement, whether it's the J6ers, whether it's the BLM people, whether it's this group of yahoos, there's going to be like this core small group of thought leaders, right? And that's going to be Marxist to the core. That's going to be critical social justice people. It's going to be the hard left factions. These are the people that the Hoppian helicopter ride might be appropriate for, right? So like they're driving the bus, but I think there's a lot of people. And I know, by the way, I grew up in South Dakota, really adjacent to Minnesota. I've got relatives that live in Minneapolis that are in that liberal camp, right? More traditional left, just center left type of
Yeah,
means
that's
well.
still the most. That's still the
You've
most people on the left, I think.
yeah, it's like a group of people that are just standard decent people that are just left leaning, that are more like this, there's this bleeding heart liberal, that whole trope, where they just really want the best for people and they mean well, but God, they're going to fuck up the execution and make things worse for everybody. But they mean well, and they can very easily get pulled into some of this. Leftists, as you know, like center left, they have a history from the anti-war stuff in Vietnam, and they have a
Yeah.
history of protesting and going out, probably because some of them don't have jobs and they have a lot of free time to protest while we're out here paying the taxes, right? Like that's a whole other separate issue. But I see a lot of people that can get easily pulled along with that sort of movement. It's particularly in Minneapolis where it's happening in their streets. They're seeing it happen. And if it's very easy, right? To look at a video and see people in your community, whether they're illegal or not, whatever, like they're being abused, like legitimately abused with no recourse. And people are like, I'm sick of it. I don't want this thing in my community. I'm going to go follow people around and blow whistle, or I'm going to, be at the protest. And I think there's a decent chunk of that. I don't know what the demographics look like, but I'm pretty sure that they're getting drugged behind that sort of, the engine of the collectivist Marxists, kind of dragging along a bunch of midwit normies, if that makes sense.
I mean, that's the way all movements operate, right? There's this hyper energized, usually intellectual vanguard, and they pull along the people behind them.
Except MAGA, there's no intellectual vanguard there.
Yeah, it's a vanguard. I don't know if I'd call it intellectual.
Anti-intellectual.
And, we were talking about the people that are switching their supposed principles on a dime. The reason they voted for Trump in 2016 and 20 is just completely being perverted now that he's, trying to hush up these Epstein files and whatnot. And I think the ones with the biggest social media accounts, I think they're probably being paid or influenced in some way by offers of future jobs or maybe blackmail. But most people, I think it's that other thing. They're just tribal and they just don't care. My monkey over your monkey, when it comes to fight between a tribe of monkeys.
Pretty much. So how do we get out of this spiral, man? Like it feels to me like the longer we wait to address it, the harder the puzzle becomes to resolve. And I don't think what we know is going to happen with the currency crisis and the collapse of society in some form is the solution. That's just kind of like the beginning. I feel like we're at the end of one chapter. We're about ready to turn the page into another one, and I have no idea what that
Well, the
next chapter
problem
looks like.
is if society collapses, it's not like the ghost of Murray Rothbard is going to invade everybody's heart and teach
Nope.
them to be anarchists. It's going to be some sort of either socialist or super authoritarian right wing thing. And there'll be splinter camps fighting each other all across the continent. That's what it's obviously going to be. So our job as guys with too much time and a microphone in front of us is to, try to preach the peaceful prosperous philosophy that is libertarianism and try to be the best version of ourselves such that people will be receptive to listen to us, because nobody is going to think about your weird, obscure, wonky philosophy if they think you're a bad actor.
Oh boy, and isn't that the worst part about libertarians is that they just don't set a good example. Ron Paul was the best. Like he set the best example.
He
And
was amazing.
and
Yeah,
he talked about setting a good example. I think Thomas Massey's another one who's like that, who
I
lives
agree.
it.
Yeah.
Build his own house with his bare hands from timber from his property and
That documentary of him in his house is amazing. I feel simultaneously inspired and like just the biggest lazy, dumb sack of, I don't know how to fix my sink.
yeah, man, and that's what we need, I think. And I think the more libertarians who would do stuff in the real world. And I'm trying to exemplify this as well. We're building an off-grid property in Tennessee and trying to be self-sufficient, all that stuff. That's where we're going, and I think more people need to focus on that because
Are
the
you doing that
chances.
thing with Josiah Baker?
Nope,
He's doing something similar, but a lot of people are doing that in Tennessee. It looks like.
It is just strictly for my family, getting a bunch of acreage and just making sure that we have a nice place to be as safe as possible and self-sustaining as possible. Solar power, everything completely off grid. We have water access, like, chickens, whatever, like canning food and all the things to prepare just in case. I think that's a really smart idea. And I think more people should do that. Stack your guns and ammo, stack your metals, like get ready for shit when it really hits the fan, because who knows what the future is going to hold. So that I think that could certainly be something that libertarians could do to sort of set a better example and to actually do something instead of bitch, because I think people realize, or you should realize, nobody's listening to us. We've been, saying the same stuff forever, and nobody is taking anyone seriously, and they don't want to do.
We do have good messengers. But like just when it seems like a guy like Dave Smith is starting to get big and starting to, reach out to leftists, say, and like make him question socialism or various aspects of paternalism, then something weird like the Israel Gaza thing torches off. And now everybody's at each other's throats from a completely orthogonal direction. It's like, come on, God.
Yeah, and that's a tough one too. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Scott Horton, and I know Dave is as well. And I think that's a really important issue. Having our money go to genocide an entire people, it's like it's kind of hard to stay quiet about that if you have any soul or conscience. And so I get why he's involved in that. And
I get
honestly,
it. It's just it's sad that it went down like that. I don't talk about it. It's just not my beat, and it's too depressing. I like to push libertarianism. I like to stress, just try and change topics. It's so depressing, man. Brent, you're bringing me down.
I know I really got to pivot back to consciousness, man. So let's talk about specific stuff like a theory of mind.
Let's get there in steps and legal chess moves.
I'm ADD, I told you, I'll just jump all the way there.
Talking about libertarian political philosophy, and one of the things that bugs me about our side, libertarians, is that you'll ask them, where they get their morals or something, or do you have any philosophy? And they'll say, yeah, I'm a libertarian, completely seeming not to understand that political philosophy is a tiny, tiny sliver of overall philosophy. And if you're using libertarianism as a guide to your actions, you're blind, deaf, and dumb. It gives you the basic minimum, what you're not supposed to do to other people, but it doesn't tell you how to live your life.
Mm-hmm.
Should you have a Puritan work ethic, or should you try to economize on effort versus reward? Should you be nice to your wife? Should you spend time with your kids, or should you do self-empowerment things? And that's before you even get to considerations of metaphysics. What's the nature of reality? Is there a God? What's the truth of our universe? What in the hell is going on with quantum mechanics that nobody understands, to the point where scientists call each other dumb if they try to think of a reason for what's going on, and instead they're just crunching the numbers. That's a weird turn I didn't expect to occur in physics, where you're like being mocked for trying to understand what's actually happening rather than just doing the math.
Well, physics is just
horrifying.
as toxic as politics and that sort of realm too. I've learned that. I've had Dr. Delbert Larson on the show, who's got a counter theory to overturn Einstein. Like, he's a very smart guy. He built particle colliders for a living and stuff, and he's got a rebooted version of the quantum luminiferous ether theory, which is rigorous and everything checks out. It can drive Maxwell's equation. Like it's super rigorous, and that guy is he can't get any traction at all. And basically, I think Eric Weinstein is another person who's got geometric unity he's trying to put forward, and he's calling out like no, we've got this string theory sort of like cabal that runs all of physics, and
Well,
you're not allowed to run counter to it. So it seems like this is just endemic.
the old adage that physics advances one funeral at a time. And boy, that seems to be the case. And I can't help but be suspicious that how do you have such monopoly in science and restricted access? Well, there is an awful lot of government funding that's going through there. So if these elders sit on the channels of the money pipeline, well, then obviously we're going to have a stifled scientific pursuit, which is tragic. I mean, like, what's more important than understanding the nature of our universe such that we can prosper in it? And it's got a chokehold on it. And I don't understand. I tried to read Eric's paper about geometric unity. Good luck. But I do believe that string theory is a dead end, and they're just clinging onto it for apparently ideological reasons. Scientists can be dogmatic too.
Have you heard of Eric's theory about why they're doing this?
I've heard him speak about it. I don't know if I can name it, but
his claim, or put it this way, it's not a strong claim. It's at least a suspicion. He believes that government 40 years ago had a major breakthrough in physics. Because the government's done this before, where they've completely blackballed things. They completely hid things in this sort of secret dark ops world, and they would not release it. And so he believes that string theory is kind of like a psyop, that they actually had a breakthrough 40 years ago, and they could understand there's some breakthrough in physics. I'm not sure what that would be, but they've used string theory to sort of string along the world. And so it's a thing that is not empirically verifiable. Like the string theorists will tell you this too. Like, how would you possibly prove that it's true? Like, well, it's a bunch. The math works out. We think the math works out, but you can't actually prove it in any meaningful way. So it'd be a great red herring to sort of roll out and sort of, you just keep pumping the money down the pipeline to fund the string theory physics, and they dominate everything and they exclude everybody else. That's a pretty good racket, and it could throw people off the scent, and it could allow the government. These UAPs that we're seeing, like the directed energy weapons. Maybe this is a result of some of that stuff that they sort of kept from the public eye 40 years ago. I mean, that's an interesting theory. There's no way to verify it, but it kind of tracks when you think about it.
Yeah, it tracks. I tend to be super skeptical about claims such as these. Again, part of it is my gambler's background. I like not to be fooled. It's easy to believe things that UFOs are fun. Government conspiracies are fun. But usually, Occam's razor style, you can find some good old human nefariousness reason for this sort of thing. Like being comfortable in some sort of sinecure is just nice, and who wants to have to admit that you've been an idiot for the last 25 years? And it turns out that this new kid has a better understanding. Nobody likes that.
That's certainly true. It's a possibility. By the way, I'm more along the lines like a Michael Shermer. Like, I lean skeptical, like really hard skeptical. But I think things like the Epstein case, not to bring that back again, seem to reinforce the fact that, actually there are conspiracies, and they're everywhere, they're deep, and they're pervasive. Because I always took that trope before. I was like, well, you know how hard it is to keep a secret? You know how hard it is to keep a conspiracy going? How many people have to be like, well, actually you can do it. Clearly, you can do it.
I just, I'm a Michael Malice devotee, and it's one red pill you're supposed to take, not the whole bottle. But I do believe in conspiracies. I mean, everything that got us into the Iraq War was kind of a conspiracy. I do believe that the CIA and the Pentagon killed Kennedy. It took me a long time to come to that conclusion, and it was mostly the autopsy that convinced me. That was a messed up multiple series of autopsies.
Yep.
But in general, I think we really love to see patterns, like you said, and it's easy to see a false pattern and just jump on it Alex Jones style or Candace Owens style these days. And I try not to do that. The world is complicated and nefarious enough without, telling yourself a story that isn't true or leaning on it before the evidence is in.
Well, yeah, that's an interesting one, because I'm always the guy who's leaning into it before the evidence is in, but I try to be responsible with it as well and say, like, look, like, say things like, this is just my pattern recognition, or based on the
Sure.
available evidence,
Sure.
I think this is more likely true than not.
Sure.
But nobody likes to talk like that. Like people do
Yeah,
the
but you gotta. Alex Jones made money not by talking like that. But I think it's better for your soul, not to mention your
sanity,
epistemological
probably.
soundness and sanity, to be sure that your foot is on solid ground and say you're speculating when you're speculating. But by all means, I'm not the guy who says don't look into stuff. Look into stuff. But yeah, usually it's probably overblown.
Well, talk to me about epistemology, because I'm a huge fan as well. And I think that a sort of an understanding of the foundational philosophical concepts like metaphysics and epistemology, like really, they really provide value. The laws of logic, for example, like all that base layer stuff is super important. How do you view epistemology in today's world with not only information overload from everywhere, suspect quality of information, abundance of like information period, and then obviously when it comes to like government, that sort of opaque wall that you can't see through? You kind of have to infer, based off of other data points, like what might be going on behind the wall. Like, how do you think about epistemology in that situation?
I say tread carefully. There's two errors you can make. One is just to believe things unskeptically, or maybe you refute certain things, but you do it without a plan, ideologically a lot of times. And the other error is to say, I can't trust anything. I mean, people who've thought about epistemology have done that, for centuries. I could truly know nothing, therefore I always want to ask such people, you're like, how do you cross the street? Because at some point, the rubber meets the road and you've got to make a decision, even with incomplete information. Harken back to poker. The whole thing is about incomplete information. So I say just be aware that you're working with faulty senses. Your mind can understand aspects of reality, but not fully. But enough such that you can cross the street and you can avoid the snake and you can recognize when the fruit is ripe. So even though, I think there's great truth in the claim that you can never really perceive reality, like we're not evolved to do that. I like what we evolved is to have a user's interface of reality, and that's good enough to get us to the moon. Nothing to sneeze at. But avoid absolutes. Don't think I know everything ever, because obviously you don't. But don't therefore think you can't know anything and stay in bed all day.
That's the postmodernist error.
For sure, yeah. But it should encourage you to lean into your most noble virtues. Go forth bravely but skeptically and understand your world and operate in it to the best of your human ability. I think there's a ton of virtue there. I just think that's how we were evolved to be in our best selves, which sort of leans towards the question of God. I don't happen to believe in one. I don't think you do either.
Oh boy, I'm gonna give you like the Jordan Peterson answer. Like
I like that one.
I'm gonna waffle, because like I don't understand the question really. It's like nobody has been able to give me like a suitable definition of what God is. And what's interesting to me about the God question is that even within a certain, even if it's a narrow sect, I'm an Orthodox Christian, right? And you talk to 10 of them, you're going to get 10 different answers. It's so subjective and open to interpretation that I can't. I feel like it's weird. I get accused of waffling, and it's like when I talk to people, I feel like I can't even. It's like nailing Jello to the wall. I can't pin anything down.
Step one of a conversation is defining terms.
Of course.
And most people don't bother with that, so they talk past each other, and of course it's going to look like waffling or worse. So when I say I don't believe in God, I'm referring to every specific story of a supreme being I've ever heard of with all those specific details.
That's a great way to summarize it, and that's the way I look at it too. It's like and I hate to do like the stupid new atheist bullshit with like Richard Dawkins, like, everyone's an atheist about every god except one. I just go one for, like, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying, like, all of the claims that I've heard about any sort of god, I don't care whether it's deism or panentheism or theism or the particular variants of theism, like, I don't believe that's right, but I'm also open-minded skeptic, where I'm like, okay, and also this is, you might have seen some of my other shows, like I've had transformational psychedelic experiences, many of them, to the point where it's opened my mind. Probably see it reflected in my podcast art. I am really open to the concept and I'm convinced that something is going on. That's why I asked you in the beginning, like, what do you think's going on? There's something going on cosmically, spiritually. There's something happening here that I'm trying to put my finger on. And I feel like human religions, every single one of them, has evolved through two mechanisms, I think, which gets you to the same place essentially, which is through entheogens, imbibing some sort of psychedelic compound or psychoactive compound, or breath work, like meditation and breath work. Getting to that. And I used to see a psychologist who was a PhD at the University of Washington, who was a long-term meditator and had also taken psychedelics. And he's like, look, you get to the exact same place. One is just a lot faster way to get there. And so I think, I don't care if it's Buddhism or Hinduism, whatever, I think they all are getting your consciousness to that psychedelic state, whatever you want to call that state, where your default mode network shuts off and you're just pure awareness, like whatever, like you get there. And then I think the problem is everybody's subjective, specific DNA makeup and their life experiences, when they try to package that, right? So they try to explain it and like, this is our book and we're going to try to explain this, and it's going to be imbibed with cultural references and all this sort of stuff. And it's them trying to make sense of it.
How do you communicate it?
How do you communicate the ineffable, right? That's the big problem. And so people build up these structures and they build their entire culture with this sort of religion at the center. And they're all trying to point at the same thing, but I think they're all woefully inadequate. Like they missed the mark with respect to that.
I agree, framed as a Jordan Peterson thing. I mean, I slogged my way through Maps of Meaning. It's a great book.
Was a thick book, man.
Great book, but one of the most difficult reads I ever had, because he's using terms that, for concepts that, I mean, they're all old and also brand new, at least to the reader. So I got two things I want to tell you. The first is to nail down my atheism. I use that term. It's in reflection to all the theists and what they say a belief in God is. And I say, well, okay, I don't see any evidence for that. I obviously don't claim the opposite piece of knowledge, that I could unequivocally rule out the existence of some kind of a supreme being. There are smart people who claim that they can do that based on the definitions of omnipotence, omniscience, and whatever. I think the world is far too mysterious and unknown to us to make claims like that. But I say atheist rather than agnostic, partially because the theists are the ones framing the issue, and also because I don't think agnostic fits. Like, I can be agnostic.
Why not? Because my claim is...
I'll tell you.
Good.
I think agnostic works when you, before the Super Bowl, so you didn't have an opinion about whether the Seahawks were going to win or the Patriots. And it wasn't because you were not knowledgeable about football. It's because you could see arguments on both sides. So you're sort of agnostic about it. I can see using that word there. But for something like this, what's being presented to me from my perspective is a claim, an assertion with zero evidence to back it up. I'm not agnostic about that. I don't believe it. It's not a 50-50. It's not even close. And again, that doesn't mean I can say God doesn't exist, but I think the word agnostic is just a little wishy-washy. I use it sometimes because the bar is loud and you're just talking to a guy, but I don't think the word applies. I don't believe the assertion, so I am a not believer.
Got it.
And the second thing I have to tell you, because it's almost as woohoo as psychedelic experiences, I can't escape the nagging suspicion or belief or hope that there's something about knowledge, life-generated knowledge, that I don't know how, but can defeat entropy and be something that changes the nature of the universe that avoids the heat death of the universe through a buildup of knowledge in some way. And you'll hear various...
That's kind of a romantic view.
I know, call me a wuss. I get it, but I think life is just so amazing. Even though I don't think there's a creator, except maybe the video game one that engineered this sim, I just can't help thinking that life is doing something to combat entropy in more than just the localized fashion that the second law of thermodynamics will allow. It's a romantic hope. I could never possibly defend it intellectually, but anyway, I just wanted to get that off my chest.
No, I appreciate you saying that, and that's an interesting topic. I'm going to address that second. I'm going to go back to agnosticism. So this is where defining terms super important. I think you're using the term agnostic colloquially rather than technically. And so I've been kind of a nerd about this because I believe that everybody who's intellectually honest has to be agnostic about the God question. And agnosticism is a very specific philosophical claim. If you get to the standard definition of it, agnosticism is just a claim that the God question is unknowable. It's an epistemic claim. It's like you can't have knowledge. It's not something that can be known. You can have a belief about it. And this is where I say I'm agnostic, but also atheist. So you can be an agnostic theist, and I believe in Jesus or whatever, but I'm intellectually honest enough to say that I don't know. I'm not making a knowledge claim. I'm making a belief claim based on, totality of the evidence and Jesus, acting on my heart or whatever it's going to be, right? Whereas an atheist, I can be like, hey, I don't believe, like, I'm not convinced by your claims, these unjustified assertions. Like, I'm not convinced, but I'm also agnostic, meaning I still believe that it's an unknowable question. So that's the definitions that I'm working with. You take any umbrage with those?
Conditionally, no. Yeah, I would want to see if you could, with a straight face, use the word agnostic for just bizarre, random assertions I might make that aren't steeped in millennia of human, God versus not God. We're steeped in this thing. Is there a God? Is there not? Was Jesus a real person? So if you're comfortable using agnostic with me just saying there's a pony, on Io orbiting whichever one Io orbits, Jupiter, and you just, instead of just rejecting the claim, you go, well, I'm agnostic about that. If you're comfortable saying that, then I don't have any objection with your definition.
I would still be a pony. I'm a pony, but I would not say that it's agnostic technically, because that's something you're describing, a pony, which is a real thing, right? Something we know. We have epistemic validation that this is or empirical validation that ponies do exist as a
That's
category.
What you think. This one has 17 feet.
Well, it could be a mutation from the radiation from the star system. I don't know, but you get my point. Like, if you're saying there's a pony and it's floated, it's like Bertrand Russell's teapot, right? You could have that could exist. We can't validate whether that exists right now, but I wouldn't be agnostic, meaning it's a claim. I would not be making a knowledge claim that it's unknowable, because at some point we could make a warp drive, or we could fold the fabric of the universe and go to that place and check it out. We could experimentally validate somehow whether there was a pony there or not. So I don't think it's technically an unknowable question. I think it's incredibly difficult to know. It's borderline unknowable, but I wouldn't call something like that unknowable. That's my view.
I'm fine with that. I should say, as an aside, I'm fine with almost any definition as long as it's known. And I feel the same way about mental frameworks and paradigms and lenses through which to view the world. I think they're all useful as long as you don't get confused and forget that that's what you're doing, is intentionally operating within a paradigm. Speaking of paradigms, I don't want the listener to think I'm bashing religious people, because even as a kid, and even though I didn't believe, I couldn't help noticing that all the happiest kids and families I noticed happened to be really deeply devout people, and they weren't just believing in some crazy thing, and they were also good and kind and compassionate, which brings me back to Jordan Peterson and his Weasley way of describing God as, in some essence, the good that lasts throughout all iterations and all time. And, these hierarchies, what is the ultimate value? Once you've identified that there is something called a hierarchy, there is something that's good and something that's bad from some perspective. What happens when you start looking for the one above that and the one above that? And as you said, human societies have been pointing towards that and communicating about it inelegantly for as long as we developed these big frontal cortexes and came down out of the trees. And I'd hate to think that, being an atheist, we stopped investigating what is the nature of that series of hierarchical goods and thinking about maybe what is at the top. Like, is it, honesty or something like that, or a lack of fear, maybe? I mean, fear makes most of the evils of man, fear and greed, I guess. So I'd hate to think that just because I don't believe I don't want people to think that just because I don't think the stories are true, that there's not truth in there. Like, I love myths for the same reason. Like, I don't believe these stories, but I think when the Greeks We're talking about, you know, there being a god of war and a god of whatever Venus was. You know, I think like Peterson says, you know, these little personalities inside us that seem to take us over. And well, that's a pretty good way to talk about these things without, you know, having a background in neuroscience as they didn't.
He uses the term spirits often,
Yeah.
and not in any sort of woo-woo fashion, right? That's just how he describes those. They call them micro personalities.
Yeah.
Which are sort of orchestrated and integrated into a whole called self that we sort of perceive as ourself. But they're real things. Like they've looked at the neural circuitry. You probably know the research on that. They exist, and I think a lot of this stuff that people have been trying their best to sort of describe over the millennia, they got a lot right. I'm agreeing with you. I think a lot of things, these lessons, deep wisdom through just millennia of going through and seeing what works, seeing what doesn't work, developing your value hierarchy, that has power to it. And I think the atheists make a huge mistake in dispensing with that casually and just being like, that doesn't matter. We're enlightened now. We can do everything through pure rationality, brother. Just trust me.
One man, one vote. That's the pinnacle. You don't need anything more. Come on.
Oh, it's terrible. The Sam Harris types, you know, it's like I don't get that view. And I'm to your point earlier, I think Brett Weinstein has the best phrase for this, and he calls it literally false, metaphorically true.
Yeah, I love that.
I love that. And it's like if it's not, it's you know, empirically false. It's not actually true, but you would be better off to act as if it were true. And I think that's a very powerful category that a lot of atheists dismiss.
Let me give religion its due again, and it underscores what you were just saying. Like, say you're a peasant, and it's probably pretty difficult as a peasant who doesn't know how to read anything, let alone Latin, like to understand a moral, complex philosophy and how to live your life. But what you can do is every Sunday go listen to the weird guy at the front of the church saying whatever he's saying, and then just follow those rules. And it's a way to transmit information that you're not going to get any other way. It's super effective. It's super cheap. You know, you could insert your Richard Dawkins, you know, mimetic theory here. I think it's really useful, and we can't just poop on something that was so useful. Yes, crusades and kill in the name of gods. I get it, but still, there's a reason we have this religion-shaped hole in our psyche or our heart. I get it. I just think we're a very immature species, and as we grow, we've got to understand our makeup and not dismiss the hole, but fill it with something good, like a good philosophy, say.
Yeah, and that's where the sticky wicket is for me. And I've been trying to figure out how to do this because I look at religions and I see the pattern. I see the sort of structure and the sort of it's once you see it, you can't unsee it, and you see it replicated in things like government, right? They take the same thing. You need what do we need? We need shared identity. So here's our flag. Here's our national flag, and we've got to have rules, right? We all have to share the same rules, and then we have to have our songs. We got to sing our songs, you know. And sometimes you sing to Jesus, and sometimes you sing to you sing the national anthem as F-22s fly over, like. That thing that they do, this indoctrination from a very young age, and all of these parallels, like the systems work.
Powerful.
If they didn't work,
did you watch the Super Bowl?
I did. I'm a Seahawks fan. I'm from Seattle, so
I was rooting for the Seahawks also. Didn't know anything. I stopped watching football when they got super ridiculous during COVID, and these healthy 22-year-olds are playing a
empty
play
stadium.
and rushing to an empty stadium, rushing to the sidelines and putting on their mask. So anyway, I knew who was going to win, even though I knew nothing about the teams. Just watch the Patriots quarterback before the game starts. It's obvious. He knew he was going to lose. Patriotism, indoctrination. I reject the state entirely. But Budweiser does that damn commercial with the little baby eagle. And, you know, the wife and I are sitting next to each other just crying. I mean, I love that stuff. And I hate the state. It's crazy. It works really, really well.
So to my point now, like I've been searching for like, okay, and I know a lot about atheists. I've been around them. They're terrible people. It's like libertarians. Like you want to, you know, like, anyway, I'll put that to the side, but it's abrasive and it's off-putting and like superiority. And I'm going to, you know,
very autistic.
It's very autistic.
Superiority thing. Oh my God.
Oh, it's a hand in glove. Like it's so bad. But I'm looking at this thinking like, how do you get these people or society in general without religion to build some of the same things that are really, really important, right? So
Yeah,
I think you and I are very concerned with ethical philosophy,
big
right?
time.
Like the non-aggression principle. How should we, or what at least should we not do to people? Like what
Right.
prohibitions should we institute? Like maybe don't rape people, maybe don't eat babies, like those sort of things. Can we put a list?
Maybe don't get together in a group and decide you can just vote yourself their stuff.
Yeah, no stealing. So maybe
No
we have a
stealing.
list of things that we don't do, and we talk about moral philosophy. But like maybe we get together on a Sunday and we or Saturday even, I don't care, Thursday. We talk
Talk
about it
about them.
for an
Talk
hour,
about
and
them. Hear,
maybe
hear a
we sing
sermon.
songs and do it intentionally, right? Like to be like, maybe this won't work. And this is my question: like, is there a way to do the literally false, metaphorically true, intentionally, and embrace the whole thing, and then have community, like have people like without that sort of specter of you have to do it because this supreme being is somehow concerned with your life in some way and wants your money and all. Like, is there a way to sort of replicate and do what the state did to sort of rip off religion and sort of take the same tricks and repackage it in a way that actually results in something positive? Like, I suspect not. I don't think you can unorganically engineer that outcome, but I'm like, God, is there a way? If so, I'd love to do it.
Yeah, it has to be organic, obviously, or it won't work, but it can be done. And more importantly, if it's ever going to happen, we have to build up these things we would talk about in the big, pretty buildings on Sundays in order to have something to replace state and religious indoctrination with. Stephen Kinsella just created, with a couple other smart people, this, what did he call it? The Articles of Freedom. It's not a constitution because that would entail creating a government, but it's like a list of principles from, Kinsella's a brilliant legal theorist, and it's just all the libertarian stuff. You can have any sort of society that you want on top of this, like HOA rules or whatever, that everybody actually signs. The real social
Explicit
contract,
consent. Oh my gosh, how
explicit.
controversial.
But at the bottom of that, you want this something that just says, here's some things and principles some things are just verboten. And so you could have things like that. I mean, libertarianism itself is fascinating. Could you talk about that endlessly every Sunday if people were like into it? Give little parables about, how you can have peace and prosperity by following simple rules. It seems like a thing they could take off.
You'd think so. And I think this is where I don't know how to start because everything else, all the competing things, right? Whether it's states, governments, nationalist type of stuff, or religions, have a lengthy shared history.
Yeah.
Right, it goes back. There's like like my granddaddy was Catholic and his daddy was Catholic, and like there's that thing where it sort of you replicates. It's the mimetic transmission, like Dawkins talks about. Like we just create more copies that think the way we do, and that stuff gets baked in and reinforced by that community nature. You go to the same church, you believe the same thing, you say the same words, you sing the same songs, and it's like us. It's tribe. We're the good people, and everybody else is the bad people.
We
I
do
don't
have an
know how.
advantage, though.
What's that?
I think localism is built into our DNA in a way that broad nationalism isn't, even religion isn't. You're always going to feel more of an ineffable connection to the guy next door and your little town and the little economic community around you, even if it's a big one of those. It's funny, my wife's from Manhattan, and she'll tell you, like, it's not this one big city. It's thousands of little villages. Because
Mhm.
when you live there, you just don't ever go, most people, away from the little 2 or 3 blocks, maybe. There's a reason there's a dry cleaner, spaced out enough. And so I think, as you were saying, we've been indoctrinated to these unnatural things. Nationalism, I think, is unnatural. And it is an arrow in our quiver that we have that. Things people care about are always going to be stronger felt when it's closer to home. And that's good.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And this is to the point where I've considered going back to church, right? Like
Yeah, so have we. So have
I
we.
I look at Christianity and the contribution that's had on the West and the negative repercussions I've seen from declining church attendance and lack of belief, and it's like the whole cathedral that held up Western civilizations being torn down. It's being replaced with nothing, and we're having incredibly deleterious consequences. So I'm
Yeah.
thinking to myself, like, can I do the Weinstein thing? Can I show up and say, I don't believe in Jesus. I don't believe like literally, but I can say, hey, figuratively, there's some nuggets in here, some real good, solid principles. There's some truth and there's some cohesion. And even if I'm hanging around people that believe it to be true and this is their ontological framework they're working with, why do I give a shit? Like, if I can show up and I can have a community of people that's in my neighborhood, that's around me, like good solid people that would choose on their Sunday when they can be sleeping in to show up and spend an hour and a half thinking about, deep important questions of morality and cosmic questions, like, that's not the worst thing in the world to participate in.
No, the wife and I have literally sat down and talked about whether we should do that. One of the nice things about being involved in the Libertarian Party here in Nevada is all the people that I know in it that I do feel a deep sense of community with. We have our share of autistic, horrible people, but not many. And if atheism is on the rise and dogmatic religion is on the decline, it's really unfortunate if people, where they used to have that hierarchy, things to do, things not to do, commandments say, and things to aspire to, the life of Jesus or whatever. If that gets thrown out the window, what replaces it, if we can't let it be nihilism, we can't let it be postmodernism or whatever religion of the week these lefties are filled with, and we don't want it to be this MAGA nationalism either, where it's like, yay, get those Venezuelans or whatever, and both sides of that are just terrible. And as much as I don't believe in God, I'd much rather have people going to church than doing that.
For sure. So I'm glad that we both kind of track on that one, because I'm really struggling with that one. Like, I don't want to do it lightly, but I'm running out of I'm running out of excuses to not do it.
If you tell them the truth, you're going to get shunned, 9 out of 10 times, and you'll have to find the one that embraces you.
Or worse, you become the project friend. Like, we got to, Bob, we're going to convert Bob because damn it, he's right there. He showed up to church, but he's an atheist. We're going to convert him.
But if you lie and say you are a believer, there's something cancerous to your soul there too.
Well, that's where you just dodge like Jordan Peterson. What do you mean by believe exactly?
What do you mean by believe?
You just flip the script on them and just flood the zone with questions, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not talking to that guy anymore."
Truth? This is truer than true. I'm telling you.
It was sad to see what happened to him. I love that guy back in his heyday.
Is he going to be okay? I mean,
no, he doesn't look like he's going to be okay. Very bad. Yeah, I think Michaela put out some posts a month or two ago, and it's like it's not looking good. I think that whole benzo thing for him really
had to have weakened him, and you can't eat like that forever.
What do you mean?
I mean, that all meat thing.
Oh, sure you can.
Can you? Do you?
100%. Like, I don't do it right now, but I did it for a very long time, and there's a lot of people that I know. Actually, that's one of the things that my X account started on was I did a carnivore January like 2.5 years ago. I lost a ton of weight. Felt great. Like, you can just do it. I know people that have been on it for like 8, 10, 12 years. And it's like,
that's
fine.
A long time. Okay. I mean, I looked at it as more of a cleansing thing. Like, you had bad stuff in you, and this will help you clean it out and reset. But
it's shocking, because I was the same boat. I'm like, you can't just do this forever. I was like, I'll do it for a month, right? Like, I'll try it out, but you can't. And then I'm like I'm looking at this information. Like, Nick Norwitz is putting stuff out there, and there's all these, really credentialed people. Dr. Nina Teicholz, and like I'm like, holy shit! Like, people have been doing this for years and years and years. Dr. Sean Baker,
maybe.
Dude is buff. He's like 6'5", and he's like 280 pounds, like big old ripped dude. And all he does is eat ribeyes. Like, the dude is jacked.
Maybe we can resolve the disparity. Like, I've tried to eat like that, and I feel sick. I mean,
How long do you do it for? Because there's the keto flu. That's a real thing that like hits a lot of people.
Well, that could be it. And I'm not saying that my genetic makeup is what I think it is, but I do think that pharmaceutical companies are criminal for just selling you these one-size-fits-all drugs, because you can't do that. Humans are all very, very, very different. If your family, spent most of its gestating period, up in the Scandinavia, you're going to have a very different biome and genetic makeup than if you come from Ethiopia, than if you come from Jamaica, than if you come from. So maybe there's a difference in how the body handles it just based on that. And That could explain everything.
Biodiversity is real for sure, and
For
everybody's
sure.
an individual, and I am not going to take any umbrage with that at all. I'm not saying it's right for everybody. I'm not even recommending it, like, just to be super clear, but you can be on it like indefinitely. There's people that's like, oh, you're gonna get scurvy. It's like, no, you're not. Like, there's nothing, there's no truth to any of that stuff. It just, it works for a whole bunch of people, particularly people with autoimmune issues, which is why Michaela
Yeah.
Peterson did it, and it
Yeah.
seems to resolve horrible. Like, she had her hip replaced and an ankle replaced by the
Her
time
whole
she was
life.
like,
Yeah,
yeah,
her whole life.
and it totally cured her.
It really sorry to derail you, but I'm like you. I have a thought and I don't want it to float away. One of the worst things about, selfishly, that happened to Jordan Peterson is that, he came out in the world swinging punches and making enemies, and from my perspective, telling the truth. And now people get to, get to chortle, haha, God struck you down or whatever. And you
Yeah,
hate to
that's
you hate to see
terrible.
that happen to people.
Yeah, and I really hate to see what appeared to be him selling his soul towards the end. That was the most disappointing part for me. Him joining the Daily Wire and doing all
Yeah.
that stuff, and him going, that hurt my heart a little bit because I had a lot of respect for his earlier work. I think he was an incredible thinker, an incredible orator,
Well,
a
he still was.
communicator.
I mean, maybe that was just one of his final lessons. The things he said were true, no matter, like what kind of person he maybe is in certain aspects of his life. It's like a lot of people get mad at artists, actors, because they say horrible things. And I'm like, man, you can't listen to them. U2's a great band, no matter what Bono says. And
It's
if
separating the art from the artist, right?
yeah,
That's what they call it.
I believe it's literally true. Like, I believe that, we don't understand our own consciousness. We don't even know where our thoughts come from, literally, which is insane. I'm sitting here talking to you, but that's like literally true. And I think when people are engaged in the artistic process, there's no wonder people said the muse moved through them or something. I think something's going on, and the art really is disparate from the artist in a very real way.
Oh, man, you're like making a metaphysical claim that I completely vibe with. Have you read Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act?
I need to, but no, I haven't yet.
Dude, you have to listen to that book. That is like the magnum opus on creativity.
Am I
And
thinking of the right guy? Is that the guy who
big bearded dude that were
produced
yeah,
Wallflower, the Tom Petty album? Yeah.
Beastie Boys,
Yeah.
Jay-Z, like you go down the list, like System of a Down, like he produced every genre of just platinum, Red Hot Chili Peppers. I'm talking like every major act has been produced by Rick Rubin. And he's so woo woo about it, and he talks about it in that way that like you're tuning into a frequency, like everything is about being open and like letting this sort of like
Or
stuff come
even,
through you.
I got to read that book. You're absolutely right. Thank you
So
for
good.
reminding me. But even people who aren't speaking in woo-woo terms, like an author, will just sit there and tell you, I sat down to write this book, but then the characters started behaving the way the characters had to behave. And I just had to be true to that and steer them or write it down. I think there's something to that, definitely with music. And again, when we literally understand so little of our own consciousness that you sit down and meditate and just have no idea where these thoughts are coming from and why. So, yeah, we should be humble. I don't believe in woo-woo stuff, but I'm very, very open to the hypothesis and thinking, again, along that framework and through that lens to see where it takes you, because that is the path to discovery.
You're not even open to woo in the sense that there's something going on empirically, or not empirically, but like in the real world. There's something real that's happening that we just don't understand.
Let me
That are
define my term. When I reject woo-wooism, I'm being too broad. I'm saying things something like 90% of the woo-woo claims are not justified. But my own humility to, what we know so far in this world leaves me very open to all manner of possibilities. I'm just skeptical about specific claims and necessarily what they mean. But every time we learn something new and amazing, it's like it comes from outer space. So the next ones will be too. So you can't just have that shield up and just reject all these experiences, because who knows what they mean? Maybe something important.
that totally makes sense. And unjustified claims are one thing entirely. Man, I spent too long, I think, being too like overly skeptical. And I think you can get into a trap on both sides, either being too open-minded and just like, whoa, well, whatever,
I
everything
think
might be
Michael
true.
Shermer himself made a Category 2 error quite a few years ago and sort of stayed there.
Yeah, he's another one who I really respected back in the day. Seems to have gone off the rails. So,
Yeah, me too.
well, whatever. I'm not here to judge everybody. I'm certainly not without my flaws too. I'm just giving my perspective. But
Preach, brother.
I do think that, especially since I had some very deep psychedelic experiences, I became much more open to the idea that this reality, like you said, our interface with reality via our sense data. This goes back to Descartes' claim. Like you're radical skeptical. You go as far down as you can. You have to admit we're all subject to our sense data, and whatever might be manipulating us, some brain in the tank or evil demon or whatever it is, like we can't rule that out. So from axiomatically we have to make an assumption that our sense data is valid, right? And we have good reason to believe, right? Like we can
Or valid enough.
We can make predictions with astonishing accuracy with how the universe operates, and so it works well enough. But when you go past that, you start talking about you know you know the platonic realm or DMT land or whatever might be transcendent in that way. Like something sure seems to be going on. I don't know exactly what it is, and I feel like there's enough data points with something like what Rick talks about, and especially somebody who's done it for a living, he's been able to repeatedly, right? So this is like the scientific method almost, where there's repeatability involved, whereas like I can take any artist from any genre, I can plop myself in the room, and I can understand how to engineer the universe to extract creativity from the ether and have it flow through the room and develop something that is just mind-blowing and popular and everybody vibes with.
There's a parallel there with like quantum mechanics, where I don't think anybody knows what's going on, but you can build the thing and it works. And I think Rubin's doing something like that. The methodology works. I don't think anybody knows what it is, what's happening. Creativity is an amazing mystery. There's this weird connection with your body and your mind, as of course there should be. And
as if they're separate.
As if they're, yeah, exactly. I mean, I guess Stefan Kinsella's convinced me to be sort of a dualist about this sort of thing, which maybe brings us to free will. The determinists make a pretty strong argument. You're familiar with soft versus hard determinist claims? Soft ones are obvious. Yes, of course. We're buffeted by a million things of soft determinism. That's boring. The hard determinist claim is the only one that matters, which is essentially that from the point of the Big Bang on, if not before, a sufficient amount of compute could have gotten to here and predict, whether I'm going to do one of these or one of these. And that's a pretty strong claim when you just think about cause and effect in a billiard ball sort of way. But the thing is, on the other side of the is every single waking moment where you are making decisions. Again, you have to cross the street. So I think it's right to have a dualistic framework where you are looking at all the little bits at one end and performing the science that you can there. But then, like Mises, we view man as a creature who acts and analyze things on that metric. And you have to be able to do both, and both are true. And I'll change my mind a little bit, I guess, when somebody scans me with the fMRI or whatever and computes the trajectory of the whole cosmos and then tells me what I'm going to do for the next 2 weeks. I'll change my opinion then. But until then, you've got to act as if the thing you're experiencing every single day is in a very real way real. So free will.
I could not agree more. I think qualia is undervalued when it comes to discussions of consciousness. And I also think the mistake in believing that everything is computational, particularly with respect to consciousness, like it's not. I very much agree with Sir Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff, the OR crowd, that it is not a computation at all. Are you familiar with that at all? Are you into microtubules or any of that sort of thing?
I heard about what Penrose said a while back, and then I listened to one of your conversations with somebody, and I am intrigued. I don't know enough about the actual science to do my skeptical thing about what he may or may not be doing wrong in the experiment. But boy, that's an interesting hypothesis. I want people to look into it more. I mean, if we could actually figure out a loci for consciousness, that'd be a hell of a start.
Yeah, and it certainly seems to be
Especially
microtubules
if it has
for
a quantum element that's like, not decohering left and right, such that, we exist the way we exist and have our qualia. That would be an amazing thing to discover.
Exactly, and that's where I think that mechanistically, when you got Roger Penrose dabbling in consciousness from the perspective he came at it from, and then Stuart Hameroff, who was an anesthesiologist.
Yeah.
Those two coming together, I think they were puzzle pieces that were complementary. And then learning about van der Waals forces. Did you get into that at all? How the van der Waals forces actually forced that collapse of the wave function, repeatedly, like almost like shutters on a camera, right? Taking a snapshot of just forcing that to get, that's their bridge between that quantum world and the classical world. And that's what seems to facilitate our experience, man. It seems like a very,
it's worth looking at.
It's like a solid hypothesis.
Like my knee-jerk reaction is usually to start looking for where the magic trick was being performed, or what errors in the study. What did you do wrong such that you might be misinterpreting the results? My mind immediately goes there. But that doesn't mean I think this is, like, Penrose is a smart guy. I like smart guys with really weird ideas. That's why I like Eric Weinstein. I don't know if this geometric unity holds any water at all, but I love people that look into the field, research it deeply, and then have wacky ideas that they try and investigate. I love that.
Well, I got to shout out Delbert Larson. If you have time, look into his quantum luminiferous ether theory. It has got all the equations. It has like his entire website. I'd encourage everyone to check it out. That is exactly what I'm talking about. He gets no play. He gets no traction at all, but he spent so much time rigorously going through that theory and putting it online, and he just gets no love. So I always like to shout him out. He's been on the podcast before. I love that dude. I'm going to have him back not too long.
I have to compliment you. You look like you get really interesting guests.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know how. I reach out to people and they agree to talk to me. That's all that's happening.
That seems like a good, I'm kind of proud of my guest list too, but yours is bigger and better. So kudos.
I don't think there's any such thing as bigger doesn't always equal better. I guess that's what I'm saying. It's like now I'm looking at things like I had Dr. Lawrence Krauss on who just got outed with a bunch of gross stuff in the Epstein files. So now I'm like, well, now I'm tainted with that one. But well, whatever.
The art is not the artist.
That's true. That's true. That was an interesting experience interviewing that guy. He's definitely eccentric, definitely an out there dude, but he also had a lot of valid insights too. And I didn't, talk about any of that stuff. I was more interested in his approach from a scientific perspective. And we talked about, the God question. He was somebody who showed up to the table and said, no, I actually argued in a symposium. I took the position, and this is my belief, that human beings are inherently religious. And I was like, oh, wow, one of the leading atheists in the world making that claim. Like, that's really important.
Well, as we've covered a million times, you got to get him to rigorously define what he just meant by that statement, right? What does inherently religious mean to you exactly? Because I think we are too, in a certain way. There's something about looking up and just believing a thing that's been good for us. Like we were talking about the elites, there's something to listening to the leader and do what he says when he says run or attack or whatever. Trusting the hierarchy that you find yourself in is usually the right call. That leads us to worship of elites, belief in a hierarchy, placing our trust in it. And those are elements. I mean, any hierarchy can create a religion. I mean, we've been talking about some of the bad ones on this show, right?
I think that it is something we evolved with, and it's something that's been advantageous for us. It's produced better outcomes for our species if we are religious or susceptible to religious thinking.
Do you have any... Another great thing Brett Weinstein says all the time is that our species is basically done physically evolving. We've offloaded all our future evolution to the cultural level, which is all this meme stuff. And,
or even scarier, technological. Like this is the thing
really.
This is what concerns me, is that we've reached this stage in evolution where human beings are building robots with cognitive capabilities, embedding AI and robots to the point where they'll be able to self-replicate. And at that point, like this just might be the next stage of evolution. We might just be making ourselves obsolete. Like that's how I'm kind of viewing this.
Yeah, there are people that speculate that's just what the organic is for. It's to evolve just high enough to create a digital thing, and then that takes off. It either wipes out the organic or keeps it as pets,
Like the Matrix. Be some batteries.
Like, hey, whatever you say, copper top. So, yeah, I'm not sure yet in the early iterations of ChatGPT and all the AIs. I'd test them by telling them to recommend a book where I could learn to play deuce to seven triple draw low ball, and I know how weak that's going to be in their data set. And I just watch them lie to me, invent books, invent authors, say a real author, but put it on the title of a book that was never written. And they get better and better with that. But I'm not willing to say it's a toaster and it's always going to be, but I'm not willing to say we're anywhere near AGI. But you do have to say that, whatever Alan Turing was talking about with that test, that they did pass that, right? I mean, I can spot AI writing and talking, but probably not all the time. So
Yeah, I mean, they can certainly pass off as intelligent and conscious. I think that we're just not. I think the people that believe we're going to have AGI with computers, meaning silicon-based GPUs and whatever, I think that is a dead end road. I'm not thinking that's going to happen.
let me give you my thoughts. I think the LLMs are a dead end road, but I think if we invent AGI, we won't have invented it. We'll have taken whatever these neural nets are. I won't pretend to understand them. We will embody them, give them bodies, put them in some sort of a real environment, and embed in them something like our hunger, thirst, horniness, maybe anger, maybe not, but things that will motivate them such that they'll get up off the ground and try to do something in that environment using that neural net. And then if the thing is possible to create, it'll just happen and we won't know how. The thing will just wake up and have something like a consciousness, not like ours, obviously, but something that we will go ahead and we'll all just recognize it, like Data on Star Trek or something. And I'll use the word, I'm agnostic as to whether that's a thing that can happen. I literally don't know. I can't make an opinion.
Well, fair enough. But I think we're going to find out eventually. I think the next thing is coming is a AI bubble bust. Like we're going to see this is like the
for
dot.
sure.
Yeah, you're an economist, dude. You know what's going to happen.
Have you seen the circular flows of investment between Nvidia,
Oracle, and
it's crazy. I don't think. How is it legal? How is this not an SEC violation or some kind of fraud?
I don't know, man. But yeah, it's. I think the bubble's gonna bust. That there's a core that's gonna continue on, some core nugget that's gonna be useful, marketable.
It's just like
everyone else can lose out. Yep.
Yeah, it's a big thing that is valuable, which means tons of money are going to flood into. Some of these will be stupid and they'll get flushed out, and some of it is going to be amazing. I mean, I use AI all the time, or these LLMs, so they can drive your car. I mean, that's kind of amazing.
I gotta tell you something, man. Like working in tech, I was not really happy about this. It was kind of being foisted upon us to use. Some of the tools that have been developed are mind blowing. So now as an engineer, I can do something that would normally have taken me 6 to 9 months. I can do it in an afternoon.
Well, look,
it's
buddy,
that advanced.
You're way too happy right now. So let me remind you that all that tech is being utilized by Palantir too.
Oh boy, we didn't even get into that one. I'm not going to. We're running out of time. So maybe
I had an episode of my show where I analyzed Alex Karp, the CEO of Palantir, and that is one weird, horrifying dude with all kinds of statist beliefs that we libertarians should not like one bit.
That's a creep. Yeah, I've watched plenty of his material, and it's the hubris. It's that belief
of it. He stinks of it
to the core. Yeah.
Yeah, he should be the one talking about the Antichrist, not Peter Thiel.
Did you ever see that?
Seems kind of humble.
Did you ever see that Tim Dillon bit when he was on Rogan?
No.
Oh, it was so funny. He was talking about how sort of like tone deaf Peter Thiel was, and like disconnected. He's like, you're out there. You're like, well, I make autonomous drone technology and surveillance tech and pre-crime stuff, and my pet hobby is the Antichrist. He's like,
Peter Thiel has the autism hard. He's obviously one of us. It's amazing. I mean, it's like a superpower. It will give you focus and drive, and it'll also make you say very weird things.
Yeah. That's why we need like the tribe to sort of the tribe that has to pull back the crazy ones. The crazy ones kind of push forward, and everyone else has to reel them in and be like, hey, maybe we don't do this thing here.
So
that's
what
not a
you're
good
saying,
idea.
Brent, is it takes a village. I hear you.
Yeah. I got Hillary Clinton's book right here, man. Like it's on my bookshelf.
On fire.
Jeez. Well, anyway, man, we're up against the time crunch here, and I hate to do this because, like, seriously, dude, like, I can talk to you like 8 more hours. I have no problem whatsoever. But I promise you, I'll have you back. Like, this has been one of the top conversations I've had. We obviously vibe. I feel like the Step Brothers thing. Like, do we just
A
become
little
best
bit.
friends?
Are we best friends now?
Yep.
I'm happy to come on anytime. I would also love to have you join me on Haman Nature.
100%.
I can be the interviewer. So
Anytime.
I'm much more comfortable at. Awesome.
Would love to.
Awesome. We'll make it happen.
Cool. Why don't you tell people where to find you?
Yeah, please. My name is Adam Haman, Haman. And if you go to hamannature.com, that forwards to my Substack. I write things. I have a YouTube show and also an audio podcast called Haman Nature. You can search for that at any of the podcatchers and also on YouTube. Remember to use quotes because Michael Jackson, and I didn't think too well when I named my little show after myself. Thanks for having me on, man. This has been great.
Yep. Thank you. Talk later, man.